A Podcast Has No Name, with your hosts, Doug Harrelson and Luke Aldridge.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to A Podcast Has No Name. For the next couple of weeks, I am going to be just me, Doug Harrelson, no Luke Aldridge. However, he will be back at some point. If I end up with a co-host over some of these weeks, we'll see. In the meantime, it's just going to be me for a little while, but I will do the best to try to carry the show as best I can. Holy cow. HOTD Season 3. We are back. I have seen some rumblings in the community about this episode, and some don't like some of the book alterations. I don't think the biggest thing that upsets me is the lack of nettles, but we've already had to kind of come to terms with that. This episode, I think, captured the emotion and the intensity of the Battle of the Gullet in a way that's really made me happy to have got to sit and watch it. But let's get into the episode. I am going to save the battle part for towards the end of the conversation. And instead of just kind of going scene by scene, because I'm just going to kind of discuss each of the individual, like, sort of plot lines. And starting with the smaller ones and then work our way up to some of the bigger ones. So one of the smaller ones that we have early in the episode, Laris and Aegon are traveling from King's Landing just as we left them at the end of Season 2. However, they are searched and stopped by Rhaenyra loyalists who demand that they bend the knee and swear fealty to the Queen Rhaenyra. Laris is fine. I denounce the usurper. He has no problem. Aegon's pride will not let him do that. He even throws an insult and spits on the ground. And at that point, they are prepared to put all of them to the sword. Laris sees a way out, which is not the way that Aegon wants to go along with it, of just sort of confessing that, oh yes, this is it, and even offers the crown as just like, here, look, proof. I'm curious how that's going to play out in the next episodes. I'm really following this Laris and Aegon thread because that's one that's not very well covered in the text, and I will try not to do too much of just book talk for all you guys that are fans of the show and everything. But this is one that I have no clue how it's going to sort of... I know some of the stuff of where it'll end up, but I don't know how they're going to get there. So I'm truly excited to watch this sort of plot go through. Another sort of a small sort of plot was actually the photo that we used for the thumbnail for our Season 3 preview was the conversation between Gwaine and Kristen, where Gwaine is wondering where Vhagar is, wondering why he's taking so long, but also there is a sexual assault that occurs in the camp. And while Gwaine and Kristen both agree that he should be punished, Kristen isn't doing it himself or speaking up or doing anything. And Gwaine's worried that they're all becoming beasts and animals. And Kristen's like, this is what's going to happen because of this dark situation we're in. He's reached his full melancholy stage. And it's kind of an extension of some of the later scenes. This is I find him a little sympathetic, but I also at the same time still kind of have the bad vibes from Sir Criston Cole. He is, because you have signed up to be the commander in this war. You can't just like give up just because, yes, there are dragons and whatnot. You do have a big dragon on the way. So in theory, you do have some help coming that's a big dragon. But I don't want to get stuck too much on these small scenes. I really want to get to the good stuff. It looks like they're not going to give us the full glory of the Battle of the Red Fork, which is what it looks like this Daemon and Oscar Tully altercation is in as they're taking down all these Lannisters. In particular, because Jason Lannister is slain here. That's the battle that I believe this is. The one who slays him, Pate of Longleaf, aka Longleaf the Lion Slayer. We didn't see him. We see Roddy the Ruined come in. with the skull of Jason Lannister, and he even says the line, "We're here to die for the Dragon Queen." Culturally speaking, it's a thing that the Northerners do when winter approaches. Older men, the graybeards, as uh, was mentioned in season 1 or season 2, I beg your pardon. The graybeards, the reason that they go to war is because they're one less mouth to feed in winter. They give their family a better chance to survive, and either they die in battle. So that's why they're absolutely fearless and relentless. They're okay with death because it means life for their family, and death and glory is kind of, it's very much to the Stark sort of brand and the Northern sort of brand. So Roderick Dustin, aka Roddy the Ruin, he's the one who actually throws the skull of Jason Lannister towards Daemon Targaryen. I'm not sure if that means that he is the one that performed the kill, but I feel like that's definitely the implication. But yeah, Daemon loves these Northerners. You can see it in his face. He is so like, yeah, like we got more lions to kill. So definitely looking forward to some of the battles in the Riverlands that we are going to get soon. I will save a spoiler section towards the end. For now, we're going to keep it spoiler free, you guys. We also have sort of this plot of the dragon seeds at the Isle of Aces, and I gotta say, I actually really like this dynamic of these different characters. And this is kind of a notable plot for me. I want to give, sort of like notable plots, notable scenes, and notable performances. I don't want to say like best, or because I think that it becomes very easy to just do the big climactic parts. But there's just certain things that I really think that I do believe we're going to get more scenes with Ulf, Hugh, and Adam of Hull. They're such different characters that it makes for a really interesting tension between them. Ulf, makes this whole confession about like being molested by like a red priest, but then learning he has the blood of the dragon allegedly, and now he has the proof because he has a dragon. And he's like, you know what? But we're gonna deal with Vagar, and then we're gonna get a castle. And Hugh and Adam have to explain that being a knight does not mean you get a castle. Watch a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. He is technically, well, is he technically a knight? We'll save that discussion for another day. But just because you're a knight does not mean you're guaranteed a castle. And they say a horse, but what's a horse to? Why would you ride a horse when you have a dragon? What's the Jon Snow line? You forever ruined horses for me. In season 8, one of the few decent lines in season 8 of Game of Thrones. Hugh starts worrying, though, as Ulf is losing his courage because he's startled by a goat. And we even get a little flash of a green man. Potentially, there's a lot of speculation on the web. I'm going to still do a little bit more digging into this. Looks like they're sprinkling in a little bit of lore for us nerds to dig into. But Hugh worries that because of how long it's been, that maybe they want the blacks to, maybe the Greens want the blacks to believe that Vagar is traveling to Harrenhal. And if that's the case, what they want to do is the blacks might be doing that just to make it easier to attack Dragonstone. And this is where our friend Alice Rivers comes out and tells them that, they're missing the battle. And they're like, who are you? And she just deadpan, I'm a witch. Absolutely iconic line. That was it seems like this season is already starting to do something that previous seasons of House of the Dragon have lacked. Game of Thrones always had moments of like sort of brevity and laughter and humor. It feels like House of the Dragon, while there are some things it does well, it is very self-serious. It doesn't try to be funny. It tries to be serious at all times. This episode had some humor, which is actually kind of funny because this is a very climactic episode. So you would think this would be the episode where there'd be less humor involved. But I actually think this is a positive change because I think the emotional beats hit harder whenever there is a back and forth pacing of intense moments and then silly moments, and it's good. It really is. I always think of the Tyrion Lannister scenes from Game of Thrones. He always had some absolutely hysterical things to say, and I just don't know if we've had as much of that in this show. So finally, we're gonna start getting into some more of the meat and potatoes parts. The King's Landing situation. So the first time we flash into King's Landing, Aemon grabs Maester Orwell out of his bed and is threatening to kill him because he believes he's responsible for Aegon's disappearance. Orwell might be a little involved, but he doesn't know what's going on entirely. And luckily, before he is slain, Ironrod calls out saying that Larys is missing as well, and Aegon then concludes that concludes correctly, because we don't always get characters concluding correctly from the evidence that they are given, but he correctly identifies that in fact Aegon is gone and he went with Larys. So when Alicent arrives on the scene, though, she's told that the king would like to see her, so she starts going towards the king's bedroom because she assumes he's still bedridden. And then she hears throne room. She's like, oh, that's curious. When she walks in there, you can see everything sort of change in her expression at that point. And she's terrified now because Aemond is someone who is completely out of her control. The actress Olivia Cook even mentions it in the behind the episode, but it's very easy to see that sort of like, this situation is not what she expected, especially after the deal she just made with Rhaenyra to hopefully end without any further bloodshed. She wants it all to be over. So now she's got to come up with a backup plan, and she does think on her feet pretty quickly, but she has to do some like really crappy lying to do it. And I don't mean crappy as in it's like bad and unethical, because there's a lot of bad things happening. I just mean it's sloppy and rushed, but it's really cool to see an actor pretending to be a bad actor. She's acting like Alicent trying to act, which is, very, very meta, big picture sort of. I found it very fascinating in Olivia Cook. She's done nothing but throw phenomenal performances into every episode, so I'm not surprised that she was able to do that so well. She ends up sending a letter to Ormond Hightower claiming that it's from King Aemon. Helena almost like is starting to blow her cover right there to the Hightower Knight, Sir Soren, I believe was the name. Helena is always going to be one of my favorites. She has a unique charm to her but we won't get too far on her. I think we'll get more of her in later episodes. Ormond Hightower gets the letter, says, I guess we're chilling. I love the actor that they've got to play Ormond Hightower. I've seen clips of him in the trailer, but actually watching him in a scene, he gives a presence. Really excited to see that character develop. I think that he's going to end up being one of our favorites by the end of the season. In just a little scene, I felt very glued in to the character as he's sniffing I picked up through social media stuff that in medieval times, certain people carried little jars with scents and fragrances, whether it's like garlic or different things, to hide the smell of the fact that medieval society smelled like shit. So this actually is kind of based on a real historical thing, which is kind of cool, and is right after they're making jokes about the messenger being absolutely filthy, offers him a bath and everything. He doesn't even care that it's Aemon. He says one king is as good as another. So it seems like the Hightower camp is just very anti-Rhaenyra. They want the Hightower clan to kind of to be the grandfathers of the crown. So Ormond Hightower is the nephew to Otto Hightower, to those that don't know the entire family tree of the Hightowers. It's a little confusing. You saw his father in previous seasons, I believe in season 1, but he is no longer with us. So Ormond Hightower is House Hightower's ruling lord at this point, and Otto Hightower, despite I still want to know where Otto Hightower is, but we'll talk about that in the post spoiler things. I have some theories, but we will get to that later. So Aemon has also told Alicent that Aegon has abdicated the throne, and so he is fully claiming this throne. And this is a very Ewan Mitchell is doing a really good job of making a really good villain, but one that's interesting, relatable to a certain extent, because he does remember being mocked as a child and bullied as a child, and those wounds are still fresh to him. And we also kind of see that the Oedipus complex is a little strong in a scene where Alicent is trying to trick Aemon into to go into Harrenhal, because she knows if Vhagar and Aemon are there, he's not going to yield. He is going to fight those dragons, and it is going to be bad for all parties involved. No one will be in a good situation because of that. And in trying to do that, Aemon leans in for a kiss with her, creating a very awkward moment. It appears that before this moment with Alicent, the most of his romance has been done in the brothel with our friend Sylvie. So it feels like he's not one that likes to see a bunch of different women, and in particular, he likes the older maternal sort of ladies, so to speak. And yeah, the full Oedipus complex is in effect here. And the scene does make us all uncomfortable, but that is actually kind of the point. Discomfort is a very useful narrative building sort of device, because you now feel a level of, when he walks away and you see the look in Alicent's face, you feel for her in that moment. A good comparison of discomfort, I hate seeing the scenes of Ramsay torturing Theon, even though Theon's terrible, and I did want Theon to suffer to some extent. The suffering that he went through made it like unbearable to watch. This moment is unbearable to watch for a very different reason, but discomfort is good for narrative building. It was uncomfortable when Larys was enjoying himself to Alicent's feet. This is a very common plot device, and one that I think works very strongly for the point they are trying to prove here. All right, so now we get to actually get to now that we've covered some of the smaller scenes, we actually get to the main sort of everything that's going on at Dragonstone and in the Gullet. I've kind of skipped over those scenes sequentially because I would rather just go straight through the Gullet storyline all at once. So Alicent has explained to her council that she's made a bargain with Alicent. Or Rhaenyra is explaining to her council that she's made a bargain with Alicent. Her council does not trust this. Jace, most in particular, is advocating that this is all just a trap. At the same time, while in the sea, we have the sea snake attempting to build his relationship with Alan. It's kind of awkward. He's trying to undo the damage by not being there, by having this boy grow up a bastard at this point. Now he has rose up and he has done well, and in part due to the sea snake giving, him promotions within the ranks of the Valyrian fleet. But Alan still just does not trust him, does not feel loved, and the rift cannot just be undone by offering him one glass of dragon water. As they are sort of bonding and talking, at that point the alarm actually raises, though. Battle is upon us. And at first they're like, oh, what is it, the Greyjoys? Is it the Lannisters? No, it's the Triarchy. Corlys, I think, immediately knows what this means. It's regardless of whether or not they're in an alliance with the Blacks, he knows it's because Lohar is here for him. Lohar is here to punish him for what has happened in the Stepstones. And he does use this tactically throughout the whole battle and we'll get more to that in a second. So immediately we got to send word back to Dragonstone. Baela gets the report as well and flies in and is like, hey, there's war, dude. Like, we got to go right now. Rhaenyra's like, you know what? Bleep this. I'm ready to go fight. I'm going to fight for my claim. I'm not going to just sit here and let everyone else die on my behalf. Jace is saying, no, you can't. No, you can't, as he's been saying the entire time. He actually ends up taking it out of her hands as she's changing into her riding leathers. And it's a tough moment, because how different is the result of this battle if Rhaenyra is the one in it as opposed to Jace? Granted, she does not actually have true battle experience, but she's been riding Cyrax for a very long time. She's been riding Cyrax for longer than Jace has been alive. And perhaps things with Cyrax is also bigger than Vermax. There's a lot of potential that this doesn't play out that way if it's Rhaenyra instead of Jace involved in the battle. But I digress. He does this by telling the Queen's Guard, and this is one of the moments that I'm a little bit kind of skeptical in the logical leap here, that the Queen's Guard member would have chose to listen to Jace and protect the Queen from herself. I feel like as the Queen's Guard, you do have to listen to the Queen first and foremost. But Jace gives him some argument of, you have to protect the Queen, and if you let the Queen go, you're potentially leading her to her death. I do think that Sir Lawrence is going to end up meeting his death in the next episode for what has happened. And maybe this is part of... A lot of the book fans have complained that Rhaenyra has been a little too whitewashed. In fact, the Blacks have entirely. They've not given them enough faults. I think what makes a more interesting sort of brand of storytelling is if your good characters have flaws and your bad characters have good things about them. And they've done a good job with that with the Greens. The Greens are entertaining. The Green Council scenes are the best scenes in season 2 by a large margin. The Black Council scenes are just... when trying to find B-roll footage for the Black Council scenes, I could never find which one was in which episode, because they all just felt the same. It was just, Rhaenyra wants to do stuff. Rhaenyra is told not to do stuff. Rhaenyra is a girl. Rhaenyra can't... And it's just... And we got to avoid war and bloodshed. We got to try to keep everybody safe and not use the dragons. And the green scenes are so much more layered. They're so much more interesting. I am optimistic that this means that we're going to see a little bit more of the anger from Rhaenyra that we saw on the last episode of season 1. When it cuts to her after Lucerys has passed. And you see that in... everyone, all the memes that we were all just like, I'm ready to defend whatever war crime she commits next season. It's not saying that bad actions are justified because of tragedy, but bad actions are understandable. And it feels relatable. You understand how she could get to that point. Versus just having her be this generic good guy ends up kind of taking away a lot of what made the book character interesting, I think. The book character does have a little bit of an anger to her. Her sons have been killed. I don't blame her for being angry. So we will see. So, when Jace and Bela join in the battle, it's right when Lohar has said, we are breaking rank and I'm going right at Corlys, despite Tylan saying that that's stupid. And Lohar's like, dude, that is not my reason for being in this fight. Like, I am here to bleep up the sea snake. This is revenge. I do not care about your Westerosi struggles. I'll give credit to Condal. I know that's a name that Brian Condal, the showrunner, I know that's a name that a lot of people kind of have some issues with in the fandom. But he, after the episode, basically said that she used Thailand as a passport to get to Westeros to do what she really wanted to do, which is take down Corlys Velaryon. Corlys understands this and sets up a trap, and this was really cool. We actually got to see Corlys be like the sea snake, be the sailor that we hear so much about in legend. And they did such a great job of like this scene is so interesting to me because we get to see the dynamics of like you'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with how like naval ships work and stuff. And watching the choreography that has to go from the guys up top to the guys like looking down into the water to see how far away we are from the rocks that could destroy us. And then just the sea snake knowing exactly what needed to be done because he knew that route. It was such a brilliant sort of setup to really potentially. It does take out two of Lohar's ships, but it does not take out the ship that Lohar is on in particular. And Lohar then realizes one of the ways to do this or get through this is we're going to lighten the ship's load. Immediately at one point to ask Tylan, how much do you weigh in that armor? And Tylan immediately is turning with a blade because he knows what she's asking that for, but she's too quick and is able to knock him into the drink, so to speak. Which he said his whole goal was to not end up in the drink, and he ended up in the drink. I'm curious to see how that's going to play out in the next episodes. As they come out of this little pass, though, of the teeth, Corlys is completely shell-shocked because he looks over and he sees High Tide burning. And in the midst of that, he's knocked out for a moment. Alan takes over command for a moment and just handles the problems. But this is when things get a little bit more chaotic. So at this point, the two dragons out flying overhead have been Moondancer and Vermax, with Bela and Jace respectively riding them. That's a pretty good advantage, even though it does appear that the Triarchy has some technology to fight with the dragons. We had talked about in the recap episode, naval combat is one of the ways that you could possibly address dealing with a dragon because you can set up these scorpions and stuff like that. And, they even reference it in this episode, not a thing I'd considered, but if you set yourself up at the right angle, it's harder for the dragon to burn just your ship without burning their own ships. So, in this sort of setting, the advantage is definitely with the blacks here. However, Sheepstealer, who is being ridden by Rhaena at this point, Sheepstealer comes flying in. Oh god, we got to talk about Sheepstealer's appearance. The very opening scene of the episode is Sheepstealer and Rhaena. They had kind of left the implication of being claimed at the back end of season 2, but here we actually see that process done. Rhaena tries to sing to Sheepstealer, jumps on Sheepstealer, and I actually want to give credit to Phoebe Campbell. This is my notable performance from the episode. The panic in her voice during the battle is incredible, but she roguely climbs on top of this dragon and goes for a ride for a little while, gets thrown off, and then is trying to say, let's go to Dragonstone, and then Sheepstealer flies off. Sheepstealer comes back, though, with some sheep, cooks it up. Rhaena, I'm not sure if she was actually hungry or if she was just doing this just to be like, look, I accept your peace offering. We're cool. Let's do this. Not sure which it is. It could have been the hunger thing because she had been wandering in the wilderness in the last episode of season 8. So this would make a ton, or the last episode 8 in season 2. This would make a ton of sense if that's what they're going for there. As she gets to Dragonstone, she sees the battle going down. She goes in to try to save, and help those around her. Sheepstealer is not super... is a little helpful, but maybe causes more problems than solutions because Sheepstealer and Rhaena do not have a close bond. Rhaena does not know how to control Sheepstealer, or Sheepstealer does not give a damn what Rhaena has to say. This burning Valyrian ship starts attacking Bela, and this is the part where I was so blown away by Phoebe. Her begging the dragon in High Valyrian, the panic in her voice. Oh, and we haven't gotten a ton of Reyna, and she's been good in scenes. I'm not trying to take anything. This was the most intense sort of moments I've had, or I've got to see her as an actress, or maybe I haven't, as an actress, seen her act out this type of tension. The panic in her voice, I had like vibrated through me, like when rewatching it just to set up my notes and everything for this episode. I just found myself in tears because it just, you hear she's finally got this dragon, something that she's been desiring for so long, but she has absolutely no way to control it, and it's literally attacking her sister. And unfortunately, this is the problem: is that Sheepsealer ends up by attacking Moon Dancer. Jason Vermax try to save the day, and this is how Jason Vermax end up getting caught by one of those scorpion bolt anchor things. This one's a little bit different than like the traditional scorpion because it has a weight to it to pull the dragon into the sea. They came prepped ready to fight a dragon. They did not, and I mean, you should, if considering the state of the war you were walking into. Absolutely good job on the triarchy of being prepped and ready. Um, we knew, those of us that have read, we knew kind of how Jace was going to eventually perish. This reminded me a lot of Baelor Breakspear's death in the fact that things were quiet. There was no music, no ambiance, and normally throughout the battle scenes, there's like epic music, there's intensity, there's a lot going on. But it was quiet except for the sounds of Vermax screaming, and then as Jace comes out of the water, you just hear the splashing of him swimming, and then you just hear the of the arrow. I don't know how well that sounded through my mic, but you hear that arrow, that crossbow hit him, and then it's so sudden, it's so quick, and it's textbook Game of Thrones, and it ripped the heart out of us quite a bit. These are moments that I've known about, but it's still just seeing it on scene. I was at a watch party with a friend, and I was trying really hard not to choke up in front of everybody and just take it in stride. But rest in peace, Jacaerys Velaryon. I am super excited for the season. I know this episode is getting so it's getting good reviews, but I am seeing some people super hypercritical. The fan base is impossible to please. This episode is currently at a 9.4 on IMDb, which it puts it tied with The Red Dragon and the Gold, which is the highest rated episode of the show so far. Only zero point 0.1 points higher than Lord of the Tides, which is my personal favorite episode of the season, or of the series. I'm not sure I'm ready to put it over that in my sort of hierarchy yet, but this is definitely, they started this season off with a bang, and we have been saying this is a make or break season for this show. If they do not do well this season, the show will fail. But I have more I want to say and look forward to. However, I need to put the spoiler warning up at this point for those of you that do not wish to talk about anything that's in the books and stuff. This would be a great time for you to hit like, hit subscribe. I appreciate you watching. Hop in the comment section. A share helps so much. Send it to your other Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon fans. But I do not want to ruin the story for you guys because it's the effect that you get from these moments when you don't see them coming is very unique. Because I did watch the original Game of Thrones series without any sort of book knowledge or anything. Well, I guess we all technically did after a certain point. But yeah, so this is your official spoiler warning. Get out now while you still can. So I just had a couple of like notes that I really first and foremost, I'm so Viserys, Aegon the Younger and Viserys, the sons of Rhaenyra through Daemon Targaryen, are supposed to be on the gay abandon, and they're supposed to get intercepted by the Triarchy. I'm curious as to how they're going to play that out, because it does appear that Stormcloud was a little too small. I mean, they could just age them up. Why not? They do it all the time. But I'm curious if they're gonna like just make the dragon grow enough to be able to carry him, or if they're gonna come up with some other sort of plan. That's one that I'm not sure what the plan is yet. Another plot that we've also got a couple of characters that we in the books know are still alive, but they were thrown into the sea. And I mean, I guess Davos was thrown into the sea at the Battle of the Blackwater, and then the next episode he shows up on a rock. They're probably, my guess is they do something similar with Corlys and Tywin Lannister. I don't think they're just gonna kill them off. It's because Tywin and Corlys are actually two of the very few characters that survived this damn war. Because for the most part, everyone sort of dies. So they're two of the very few players on the board that actually make it to the end. I mean, making it to the end is, Tywin's in terrible shape, can't see, is mocked as like being hideous for the rest of his life, and possibly being like demon possessed or something. The small folk do not trust him at the end of the story. And Corlys, he loses his wife, his one of his bastard sons, his real son, his daughter, his two of his grandsons, three of his grandsons. Yeah, and that's just off the top of my head. There's so much death and destruction for the Velaryon family. Otto Hightower, he's supposed to be at King's Landing, and Rhaenyra is supposed to immediately execute him. We haven't seen him yet, but the end of last season he was in a cage somewhere. So I'm curious. I'm very curious as to what's going to happen next there. So we discussed the Aegon and Larys sort of thing for just a moment earlier. So at some point, and it might not be this season, it might be the beginning part of next season, Aegon's plot this season could be very interesting, and I think the actor that's playing him did a really good job in season 2, and we're going to fight a sneeze, and we're going to lose the battle. Alright, so I'm very curious as to how his plot is going to develop, him and Larys on the road, because right now they're captives that are being taken to probably some sort of black supporting situation. But Larys saw that as better than getting killed right there, because, what is the Tyrion Lannister quote? Life is full of possibilities. Death is boring. Like, or was it Tyrion? It might be, or no, it might have been Dumbledore from Harry Potter. I will have to research that and see exactly where I remember that quote from. So I'm curious how they're going to sort of, because it does appear in the trailer for the next episode that they have kind of gotten away from that situation, but we will see. We will see. Finally, the Alice River. So in the books, the Dragon Seeds, Adam of Hull, Hugh Hammer, and Ulf the White, are part of the battle at the Gullet. So I'm wondering if they're going to come in, and I guess technically the battle doesn't have to be over, so they might still come in and get a little action. We will see. And we can already see the discontent growing with Ulf, so I like his future betrayal makes a lot of sense. Hughes, I'm still very, very unsure of how that's going to sort of play out. So, and I saved my favorite one for last. So because we have Rhaena replacing Nettles, and they've also added this sort of layer of Rhaena not having good control of Nettles. If we do get a more angry and vengeful Rhaenyra, what if she takes out and there's some crumbs in the trailers, like her yelling at Baela at King's Landing. There's some potential that she's going to blame Rhaena for what has happened to her son, and because in the books we have Rhaenyra send for Nettles to be executed when Nettles is laying with Damon. Now, hopefully, please, hopefully they don't have that be the plot here, considering the fact that Raina is the son of Damon. But they have kind of shown that they're willing to break that barrier of parent-child incest, and yeah, that's I just hope they don't do that. And I know I said the whole thing about making us uncomfortable. Please, I don't want to be that uncomfortable. Please don't do that to us. So we will see how much of Nettle's plot ends up with Rhaena, but I can see a situation where Rhaenyra could be targeting Rhaena, and this first episode hit some notes for me. I wanted to say notable sort of arc I mentioned earlier. The dragon seeds on, was it the Isle of Faces? That's what a lot of people are saying online. I'm not 100% sure. It does make a lot of sense, but it wasn't like super well confirmed in my eyes, but we'll see. The second thing I want to give credit to, again, Phoebe Campbell. Like, I thought she was phenomenal in this episode. And the casting and the acting has always been good in every episode of this show. And in fact, every sort of spin-off of Game of Thrones and every sort of, even Game of Thrones itself, the acting and the casting was phenomenal. And finally, there's a scene I really want to reference, and I really enjoyed the scene of Corlys Velaryon navigating through. We got to see the Sea Snake be this legendary sailor that we hear so much about, because it's mostly just been referenced that he's a good sailor. We actually got to watch him be a good sailor, which was a treat for me personally. I really enjoyed that. I've already went over my time, and I wanted to keep this episode a little short because I want to get you guys a quick turnaround on the editing. Luckily, the B-roll footage will be easier to get for this episode because it's all just going to be from mostly one episode, maybe a few pieces here or there, or some art or some other stuff. But for the most part, I'm just going to get all this from like one episode. So it should be a pretty quick recording of B-roll footage, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. I promise we'll get Luke back as soon as possible, but thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, or perhaps I'll get a guest host. We will see. If you think you've got what it takes to be a guest host, reach out to me on any of my social medias. You can even reach out to the channel or to any of the podcast's social medias. But thanks again for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.
Thank you for joining us. Please join us again next week.